suddenly this kind of idea in my head of what the brief was going to be was there. And I was like, oh my God, that's it. That was the turning point. We started to get press and then it was mental. It came to a point where opportunities were literally coming at us constantly. I said yes to everything. It was just relentless. I was so kind of mentally unwell that I honestly didn't even want to get up and go anymore. I had nothing in me. I spent a Christmas in hospital after suffering what they thought at the time was a heart attack. My husband, he honestly thought I was going to die. Even then I was like too caught up in my own self-worth to not realise that actually it's okay to be vulnerable now and say I need to stop.
Would you do it again?
Would I do it again?
Well, thank you for starting this series of conversations. As an entrepreneur and a founder myself, I really feel this is necessary. So for those out there listening, what do you want them to take from these?
I want them to take an overriding feeling of positivity from it, because so much of business can be grueling and tough and really quite challenging in all aspects of life. But I want people to know that actually they're on the flip side. You know, it can be really rewarding, really positive. You can learn a lot. You can create a better understanding of yourself and your kind of driving force behind why you're doing what you're doing. And I think it'll allow people on reflection to think, well, maybe I can give it a try. And I think that's the biggest thing for me. Like, just, might not work out, but you know, you'll have a lot of ups and downs trying.
Yeah, let's get into it.
Yeah, let's.
And by the way, I love the name. It kind of, I can't help but hear now JFK sort of like, we go again, not because it is easy, we go again because it is hard. You know, when he set the bar of like landing on the moon. And what's really interesting about that whole thing is the mission, apparently, from the films I've seen and the books I've read, was so, like, the bar had been set so high that everybody, like, apparently all disagreements went out the window. Everybody came into this sort of flow state for the years running up until 1970 to get that thing landed on the moon. So no matter where you were from, no matter what you were doing, your background or your hierarchical position in the group, you just kind of came into flow state. And I think that's something quite powerful around that and thinking about a shared collective sort of mission when it comes to business, but also sort of collaborating between people and communities and businesses at large.
Definitely. I think, so one of my biggest regrets of running my business is that I didn't ever really form a very good network around me. And I think the idea of having other people who were possibly in a similar space or place, I kind of liken it a little bit to when you have a baby, when you're pregnant. With my first baby, we went to NCT classes, and you're kind of almost buying friends. You know, you're paying to do this course. You obviously haven't got a clue about what it means to grow and birth and then kind of keep a baby alive, and you're doing it with this small group of people who are at exactly the same point that you're at, and you're kind of flowing through it together. And if you've had a really bad night with your baby, or, you know, you're struggling to feed them, or you just feel like shit and you feel like you just can't do this thing, there was always someone to kind of vibe off of and say, do you know what, I had the same last night, my baby didn't sleep or whatever. And I think for me in business, I never had that. And I really needed it. I'm the sort of person that needs to be able to talk through things with other people who can empathize and relate. And, you know, there's lots of people in my life who are able to listen and hear me and go, oh, that sounds awful or what. But no one who's really like, oh my God, have you thought of this? Have you tried this? Oh, this happened to me. And I think collaboration and just sharing those thoughts it's vital. And I'm not sure that it was never available to me. And I don't know whether I should have worked harder to kind of create that myself. But that, again, is tricky because I was in an industry that I'd kind of fallen into because I taught myself to bake at home. I hadn't trained as a chef. I didn't have a network. And I think it's kind of scary to go out there and try and find those people. So yeah, I think if you're not talking and sharing and collaborating on that level, then I think you feel quite alone, and that's a really hard space to be in when you're already up against it, trying to keep this thing going.
I think the best things in the world are born out of a real need. I always come back to this idea of like, what are you uniquely positioned to give to the world that the world actually needs and wants? And unfortunately, people don't ask themselves that second bit very often. But knowing you as a friend, and also like on your journey, I guess, through the proof, I was there on the peripheral in a way, observing great brand building and beautiful product. But obviously, we're friends as well. So our kids play together. They ride to school together. I come round for delicious dinners sometimes. And on the way through the proof, I had probably a peek behind the curtain a bit more. We were comparing notes. I was introducing you to, some of my advisors and some of the things that were working for me. But it's tough. And I think that when I see so much noise on things like LinkedIn and things that are being called insight but aren't really insight, they're not based in true like experience. I see the real need for We Go Again. And what I love is the beginnings of things. So here we are today, planting a seed for something that's going to grow from here.
Yeah.
And from now on, we will go again in conversations. You will be hosting them, but we get this unique opportunity to meet you at the start of this whole series and hear about your story. So first of all, congratulations on getting this started, because 100% of everything is the first 1% and taking that first step and getting it done. How many things don't get done in the world, I often reflect, but you have taken that first step and here we are.
Yep, we are.
And I'd like to spend a bit of time getting to know you, I suppose. And I'm always intrigued as to why we do things. Why do we set up businesses? Because it can be so brutal. It can be so hard. And often when you do track back, that it's usually coming from like a very early experience, or at least that forms the way that you approach the creations that we make through our businesses and put into the world. So I wanted to ask you some questions about your early life, really.
Okay.
Where were you brought up? So
I was brought up in Torquay in Devon, which is, for anyone that doesn't know it, it's beautiful. We grew up by the sea. But it's quite, its summers are vibrant and its winters are quite bleak. There's not a huge amount to do. But it's amazing. Like, we go back there all the time now, and I kind of have this real love for it. I couldn't wait to leave as an 18-year-old, but now I can't. I desperately tried to get my husband to move there after the proof closed, because it's lovely. And being by the sea is quite a special thing for me. I don't think I appreciated it when I was growing up the way I do now.
Torquay feels like a very special place to me, just as a kind of...
Have you ever been?
Yeah, I have.
I have?
Yeah, I've been on a few like weekend trips there. I went on a quite, a stag do.
Stag do, yeah.
I went on a stag do, and it was a really enjoyable one, I think, because of the sea and because of... But the food, I remember being really, really good.
Really?
There's a few good restaurants there.
Yeah, do you know what? It's just home. Like, my best mates from school who I kind of met at the beginning of secondary school, and my best friends to this day, they all live there with their families. My mum and dad are still there. I've got lots of extended family there. It's just, my kids love it down there. It's like, it's just an escape, and that coast is so beautiful. And we walk the dogs, and it's just quite a wholesome place. Now, but as a teenager, I hated it. I couldn't wait to escape. It felt like the most boring, bleak, kind of like tiny bubble where everyone knew each other, that I just was desperate to escape. But yeah, no, Devon has my heart. I would go back there in a flash if Chris allowed it.
You mentioned your parents' business. Can you tell us a bit about that? And did that do you think, anything that influenced you in your later life in terms of thinking about setting up a business? Because a lot of people, if you haven't experienced that, they would never even feel that they had the agency to be able to come out of a full-time wage, for example, or start something themselves. But if you've been modelled that in some way by your parents, do you think that helped? You may take a leap?
Yeah. So I only remember my parents grafting.
What was the business?
So they ran a residential care home. So Torquay is full of very elderly people because it's where people go to retire by the sea. So there's a thriving kind of community of people going into care homes.
A thriving care home. That's almost a contradiction, isn't it?
Yeah.
But hopefully it is
Yeah,
thriving.
it's probably the
in
wrong
that
choice of
age.
words, actually. No, I think there's just a lot of them.
Yeah.
And within my family and my extended family, they all seem to have them. And that was the family business. And it was tough. Like, I just remember my mum would be doing the cooking. My dad would be doing everything else. We were there a lot. We never had much money. But no one ever had a job. No one, I don't remember anyone in my family having an actual career or job, paid job. So it's all I knew, really. I remember, for me, seeing them struggle, because they did struggle for a long time. Seeing them struggle made me very resilient in my mindset that I was going to be rich one day. That's all I could think. One day I'll be rich. Which hasn't happened yet, by the way. But it just, I was like, I don't want to struggle like them. They worked so hard. But I think the one thing it did do was it instilled in me this like drive. You have to get up every day and you have to get on with it. And if you don't, well, no one's just going to give it to you. And so my mum was very much like, we don't want our children. So my mum remarried who I call my dad, who's brought me up. So my mum and dad ran the business. They had 2 more daughters. So there were 3 of us. And my mum and dad were very much like, we don't want them to go carry on this business. We want them to get out of Torquay, go, travel, thrive outside of this very small town. So we had to, education was a very, very important part of our lives. We all went to grammar schools. We all had to like work hard. We were pushed. And we did. And all 3 of us went on to leave, to go to uni, to do very different things. And I always come back to that. Like, they made me want to do something for myself, to create something for myself. And whilst I've had jobs where I've been paid to work, I always had it in me that I just want to be my own boss. I want to do something that I can kind of mold into something that'll be mine. And then maybe my kids might want to do it, or maybe they won't. But whatever happens, I'm going to build some sort of security in something I'm going to create. And it took me a long time to actually do that. But yeah, when I reflect on them, I just remember how hard they worked. Like, at one point, I think, because my dad's also a golf pro, which was like, when I say that to people now, they're like, that's amazing. And I totally lost on 3 daughters, and we couldn't have cared less that he was a golf pro. But now, when I remember, you know, they were working all day at the business, and he'd go out and teach lessons. And he'd also play in tournaments, like constantly trying to bring in extra cash to kind of survive. And outside our kind of bubble, the families, our extended family were all quite wealthy. So we always kind of, I remember growing up feeling like the poor part of the family. It always felt like it was tough to survive financially for my mum and dad. And I think that just made me even more ambitious to kind of make life easier for them, for us, for me, and to not have to work so hard, which is ironic because that's exactly what I ended up doing. But I just, and I think about that now, and like, I'm like, there was never probably anything else I was going to do other than want to run my own business, because my grandmother was running her own business, my auntie, you know, everyone did. So it was kind of normal. Whereas Chris, my husband, doesn't come from a family who have done that. They've all built amazing careers and worked for people. And I think it's a very different mentality. I think sometimes he thinks I'm absolutely mental, and I make life much harder for myself. But yeah, it's almost like it's in my kind of genetic makeup. And even now, I'm like, oh, I'm starting to get that itch. What am I going to do next? Which is a tricky conversation to have at home. But yeah, I kind of track back to them. You know, they were my first, I guess they were entrepreneurs.
I don't know what percentage of the world is I think many people are entrepreneurial but don't take that first step. And I think often it's because it hasn't been shown to them. And so you realize that the conversations you overhear, like round the dinner table or just between your parents when you're younger, that will maybe help you think I can take a leap. Because many people don't. You know, they never realize that you can come out. It is scary, but I think that there's a perceived security in having a monthly wage and a full-time job, because all you're actually doing is sort of subcontracting the risk to someone else, and they may be able to like style it out and pretend everything's good, but actually it's a roller coaster in their hands rather than your hands. And so the moment that I took that leap of faith, and I was encouraged by both my parents, but particularly my dad, he was like, what have you got to lose but the shirt off your back? You've got no kids, there's no responsibility, just go and do it. And I'm so glad he did, because even that first month that I came out of a monthly wage, I felt liberated and living a more sort of honest life than I'd ever felt before. I felt like I can go out and actually create my own destiny. And I think that is more of a life well lived than, and it's hard because it's like I'm encouraging everybody to come out of a full-time role and like start something up, and that's just not possible.
Don't do that. No.
There's a percentage of society that actually go and do it, but there is something real and raw and quite tough but quite beautiful about being the master of your own destiny.
It's very powerful.
It is.
When it's going well.
When it's, all of it is part of it, right? I'm interested in your sisters as well. Have they adopted the same sort of approach to life? Did they set things up?
No, actually, they're very different. So both very creative. My middle sister, Olivia, she's an artist. She obviously works, but her career is her art. And that's a tough career. But she makes beautiful things. So, you know, she's achieving her ambitions. And then my younger sister, Gabriella, she is a buyer. She works in fashion. So she is a very savvy businesswoman, but I have absolutely no doubt she could run a business. She's she's got that mentality, that aptitude, that brain, but she loves the safety of that corporate world and the protection that holds. And I think also she's seen what can happen when it goes wrong, and that's not for her. She's climbing the ladder in a very successful way. Nice. So yeah, I think we're all quite different, actually. I think so. I've probably got a little bit of a chip on my shoulder from my kind of childhood, in that my mum and dad split. I have had a very tricky relationship with my biological dad. In fact, I've been estranged from him since I was about 17. He was always very in and out of my life, very successful man, very selfish human being. And I think I never felt enough. And it was always very tricky navigating this new family, this lovely new family, of which I was totally a part of, and him, and always feeling like a bit of an outsider looking in. I always felt like I was slightly separate, even though I wasn't, but I was. And that, I think, made me very insecure as a child, teenager. Like it made me very insecure. It made me quite angry. And I think I always had this kind of mindset that I'll show him I'm going to do amazing things. I'm going to drive a Porsche by the time I'm 30, you know? Like, a lot of it was money-based. And kind of, I just had this fire in me that I was going to do something good and special and show people what I'm worth. Because I don't think I ever felt like I was enough. I wasn't enough for him. I didn't feel like I was enough of my new family, even though I was, but I just didn't feel it. And that built inside me. And I had a very kind of tumultuous teenage to kind of up until I left home and went to uni, period of my life where I was just so angry, but so fueled to do something. So I think I'm different in that sense, that I've had that kind of life experience, which my sisters didn't have, which has set me aside. I also saw probably more firsthand my mum and dad struggle financially. Whereas by the time my siblings were older, life was a bit easier. And I just wanted to make loads of money. And I kind of held that as, if I'm doing amazing things and got loads of money and a nice car, then I'm worth something. And it took a long time to unpack that as an adult. It took a long time. But I think that is why I have always felt compelled to kind of curate and own my own path, and to not have anyone tell me how I can and can't do it. It's like my little bit of control. And that's how I ended up starting the Proof. I'd had other things I'd done prior to the Proof, businesses not related to bakeries at all, other things that I started and didn't work out very well. But I was constantly, like, my friends would probably describe me as probably quite ADHD. I'm undiagnosed, but I see a lot of traits in myself that my diagnosed son has, and I'm like, oh my goodness, that is very familiar. And I tend to flit a lot. If something's not working out, I'll stop and I'll try something new. And that's, the more I've thought about things over the last kind of 18 months, and I've tried to understand why things have happened in my life as they have in a quite a reflective way, I've tracked it back to my kind of upbringing, and I'm like, oh, that makes a lot of sense. Why I am the way I am, why I've attached so much about money and things to my self-worth, because I just didn't have very good self-worth as a young person, which is really sad. It's really sad, because it's like, I can say now, from someone who's basically lost everything, like, it's so, obviously money can help you create a nice life and pay for things, and you can do lovely things with your kids, you can buy nice clothes, whatever. But actually, when you kind of scrape all of that back and you don't have that, then you have to look at what you do have. And actually, I was quite a nice kid. I was just quite misunderstood. And there was lots going on behind the scenes, and I just didn't talk about it. So I think that's probably why I'm the one that's tried to create something, and my sisters haven't.
Well, I want to get into the Proof, but before that, I just want to stay with young Francesca Strange a little longer. And I think it is interesting, isn't it, how adversity, while you wouldn't welcome it, it does end up being a gift. So many of these things that we wouldn't really choose, they end up being something that you can then rally against. And in nature, trees, like the saplings that have had the worst weather, the weather-beaten saplings that have to grow into the wind and the rain, and they become the strongest ones, and trees that have just been sort of shielded and in the shade, they don't end up being the most resilient over time. So in a way, there's a beautiful quote by this philosopher called Bayo Akamolofe, which is, "May your path be rough." And he often ends conversations when he has them with that, "May your path be rough." Would we invite a rough path? No, it's horrible. It's fucking terrible at points. But actually that's what forges us, isn't it? Yeah. So that young Francesca Strange, I'm interested, did she have ideas as to how she was going to make money, create value? Like, what did she want to be when she grew up?
I don't know if I ever had a real idea of what I wanted to be. I just wanted to escape. I just wanted to get out of my hometown, and I just wanted to do something. I never went traveling. I hated uni. I did lots of different jobs. I think I was capable of a lot more. I'm not sure I really saw the value in me as a person for a long time. And so I kind of moved around a lot, trying lots of different things. I also lacked confidence. So there's a big part of the problem. If you're not really feeling confident, then you're not going to be brave enough to try. And I think the first business I started was when I was in my 20s, and I was a kind of struggling music journalist. Wasn't making much money, had big ambitions for it. Set up my own website where I brought in lots of students who were studying journalism at university to write for me. So I had this massive, actually it was a really good business. And it was really starting to go somewhere. And I actually started to feel like, oh, I'm building something of value. And I'm getting some direction in my life. And then I fell pregnant with my first child, and that kind of derailed things a little bit. And I found myself lost again. And I was like, oh, okay, I'll just go back to being a PA because I don't really know what else to do. And I need some security, and I need to pay for this child, and we need a home, and, and it took a long time. I mean, probably now I don't really know what I want to do and why. I just have so many ideas in my head constantly of, oh, what about that? Oh, I should try that. And that's an amazing business. And I'll come home to Chris and I'll be like, I had this idea. And he'll be like, okay, what is it now? And yeah, the proof was kind of an accidental thing because I have a serious nut allergy. I'd had it for years, and I got sick of the fact that I could never bloody order dessert in a restaurant. I could never go to a bloody bakery and have a cake because I always had to think about the risks, and it wasn't worth it. So I taught myself to bake so that I could have nice things to eat at home. And back then, the free from kind of section in the supermarket didn't exist. And I just created this tiny little niche for myself because I saw a gap that I needed to fill for me. And the rest is kind of history from there. And it's often a little seed of something that I think, oh, I can do that. And God loves a trier. I like to try.
Yeah.
And I'm just kind of game for trying lots of different things.
And when you were building the proof, obviously from the outside, I'm a brand builder, so I was watching it emerge and watching the product emerge and starting to see some of the deals you were doing. But I also saw just how hard you were working. Chris was out every weekend delivering things, and it was this kind of almost, I could see the veneer of this beautiful brand that seemed to be getting traction. And then I could see actually the effect that it was having on you at points. And in fact, you were quite open at the point that it actually affected your health quite badly as well. So can you tell us some of the journey, I suppose, a whistle-stop tour of from the beginning and how it grew, and then how you finally decided to make the very tough decision to call it quits?
Yeah. So we really, we found ourselves when we went into lockdown, I was unemployed, Chris was furloughed, and I'd been banging on about this concept for a sharing desserts company, that whole sit around the table, dinner party, share a dessert kind of concept, because I was like, the stuff you get in the supermarkets is pretty boring, and being nut free. So when we kind of found ourselves in this world where we were stuck at home and we were like, what do we do? Chris was like, now's the time. Why don't you give it a go? So we literally printed up maybe 3,000 flyers, and he went out with my eldest daughter, one of my nephews, some local teenagers, and they walked the streets of Hackney and North London just delivering flyers. And the amazing thing is because back then in that early kind of stage of COVID, when every street had a WhatsApp and everyone was looking out for each other and it all became really community led, someone would order a cake because they got a flyer, and then they pop the details of the proof into their WhatsApp, and you'd see this trickle effect where you then deliver to another house on that street. And it took off from there, really. And then we got introduced to a PR company, and Francis from the PR company, Tonic, was, we'll take a punt and we'll see if we can help you out. And we did an amazing photo shoot with an amazing photographer, and we kind of really worked hard on our branding. And suddenly this kind of idea in my head of what the brief was going to be was there. And I was like, oh my God, that's it. That's exactly what I want. That's how beautiful I want it to look. And honestly, that was kind of it. That was the turning point. We started to get press, and then orders. It was mental. The whole downstairs of my house became basically a kitchen.
Yeah.
My youngest daughter's bedroom became a packaging area. And it was wild. Like, those early days were amazing. I remember our first Christmas, and I had all my family, my mum and dad, my sisters, packing hampers in my kitchen. And it was really special. It was really fun. And it really felt like this thing was going to go somewhere. And it did. And then over the next kind of 4 years, we went from my home to having a commercial kitchen and shop in Dalston. We were picked up by Selfridges, who we did cakes for, and we created lines for them, you know, like Halloween cupcakes, Christmas like there was a constant churn of products going into Selfridges. We took on wholesale clients. We did massive events, massive festivals. Like, this business, it came to a point where opportunities were literally coming at us constantly. And me being the person that's like, I've got to keep the pipeline rolling, I just said yes to everything. Said yes to everything. And at the time, it was like, oh my God, what is happening? What are we doing? This is unreal. I can't believe we've gone from literally 0 to 1 million overnight. And I don't mean that in figures. I just mean in terms of speed. And for a moment, it was very, very special. It felt like we were going to scale this thing and make it into, like, I don't know, like, I had ambitions of being in supermarkets and having stores all up the country. And then the reality very quickly became that I was working 7 days a week, like insane hours. I was probably the first person in the kitchen, the last person in the kitchen every day. I'd be up at, you know, God knows o'clock, doing deliveries into central London. Staffing was a massive problem. We never had enough money to hire really amazing people that had scaled businesses like this before. The opportunities that felt like they were gonna make this £1 million business soon became apparent that they were terrible decisions to have taken. And this, like, amazing thing that was born out of me having a really severe nut allergy and wanting to do something really, like, different for the free from community. We kind of found ourselves so far away from that, and the scale was so big, but on a shoestring budget. And as you probably know, you know, when you're employing people, when you've got a lot of money being spent every month, you need more money coming in. And it became just, the slog was just relentless. It like you said, it made me very unwell physically. I spent a Christmas in hospital after suffering what they thought at the time was a heart attack. 10 days in Homerton Hospital over Christmas is quite a sobering experience. Having your eldest daughter come and visit you on Christmas Eve, like that was a low point. But it wasn't enough to stop me. I think at that point, even then, I was like too caught up in my own self-worth to not realise that actually it's okay to be vulnerable now and say, I need to stop. I couldn't stop. We stopped a year and a half later, which is mental. I mean, I remember my mum crying on me on New Year's Eve after I got out of hospital that year. And like, I can't support you anymore if you keep doing this. Like, this is killing you. But I just couldn't stop. We were in so deep. And at that point, we were in talks for investment, and we were in talks, like, it just felt like I couldn't stop this humongous kind of train that was out of control. I couldn't pull it back. So yeah, I think we're a very good example of a little business with a great idea and a great concept and a great branding, growing too fast with no money. And it's just not sustainable. We didn't have the financial runway to keep it going. And we got to a point at the beginning of 2024 where I started to scale it back, reduce the team, got rid of, certain, we stopped Selfridges, stuff like that. And we started to kind of rein it in so that we could get control of it again. But by that point, it was too late. And I had to make genuinely one of the most horrific decisions I've ever had to make, because I had to, in making that decision, people lost money, people lost jobs, we lost everything. And I tried so hard to hold on to it, and I just couldn't in the end. And, when you take the money out of it and what was lost, when you think about the hours we put in and the time and everything we sacrificed for it, it's very hard to let go of that as well. But ultimately, I couldn't work any harder. I couldn't put any more into it. There was nothing left.
Yeah.
And if we couldn't make it work then, I don't think carrying it on for another 6-12 months would have made a difference. We had to call time.
Wow, what a journey. Thank you for sharing all of that, because I think, and the point of these conversations you're going to have moving forward is we hear so much about people that are on the rise.
Yeah.
And I think so much of the modern world is really about projecting this sort of veneer or this like aura of success. But actually, for a couple of reasons, I think when you're on the downward part of the roller coaster, you're too busy and caught up in it to be able to share that stuff often. But also it does feel like failure. And we know with hindsight and maturing sort of minds that there aren't any failures. There's only the failure of not learning from things, right? That's the only mistake you could ever make, is to not learn from these things and to reflect on them. So I think it's very necessary for you to share honestly those experiences, and for people that are running businesses that maybe just aren't right, and they know deep down in their heart of hearts it's taking more than it's giving and it may not get anywhere. It's the hardest decision in the world to make, but it will be okay.
Yeah.
And like, what unexpected blessings come from those decisions. When you get 12 months down the line, it's often quite interesting to reflect, I feel lighter, or and now I've got like things back in my life that I just had given up. And I'm intrigued to know like what it's like running a business with your husband, because I think that's quite intense and not for everyone. But like, how was that?
Yeah, that was amazing. I love working with Chris. I think he's got a great brain, and like he's full of ambition and ideas. He's creative director, brand director. He's a vision guy, right? He got really into the business, but at the same time he was working. So his job came back, and it was always the kind of intention for him to maybe step into the proof, full time at some point. And that never happened. And I think as time went on, all of the positives we had, they just weren't there anymore with working together, because often, I mean, look, I wasn't present for my kids. It kind of, now when I'm with them, it breaks me, because I'm like, I just wasn't there. And when you stop and you look back, and he was working, helping in the proof, and basically holding it down at home. And I'm not sure he gets enough credit for what it took to do that. And then that weighs him down quite heavily. Even now, I think I'm way more reflective. Whereas he can't really see the positives in any of it, because it was such a brutal time for him. And not only that, he was there every day with me in the hospital. He came with me when I had my angiogram, which was bloody terrifying. He was there when I had the incident, and he honestly thought I was going to die. And then he's been there helping me pick up the pieces since. And I think it's amazing. I'd work with Chris again, like genuinely. We sort of do a little bit now. But it's hard going on a relationship, and I think you've got to be really solid to weather that, because sometimes the storms, they come between you as a couple. For us, we have 3 children, we have a mortgage. You know, we weren't in our 20s starting this with no kind of responsibilities. We had so much shit going on at home. We had to provide a home and make sure our kids were fed and warm. And I didn't pay myself in that entire time I worked for the proof. So already at the end of the proof, we were financially living on fumes because I hadn't had an income. And then when the proof closed, unfortunately, in growing this business, we had to build a growing kitchen. And for anyone that works in the food industry, they'll know that industrial commercial equipment for kitchens is really fucking expensive. So we had to fit out our kitchen, and we couldn't just go and buy secondhand because we didn't have any money. So a lot of the stuff that was in the kitchen was all financed with personal guarantees. So now, not only has the business gone, you've lost all that time, you're absolutely broken mentally and physically, you've got debts coming out of your ears. We found ourselves liable for 100 grand's worth of personal guaranteed debt. And I mean, like, it's very hard to then, especially for me as the driving force behind the business, you know, it was my baby primarily, to come home to my family and to know that not only have we lost everything and all that time and everything we put into it, but we've also now got to find 100 grand to keep the payments up for this debt. Amazingly, we are still married and we are very happy.
Yeah.
But I do have moments, particularly in the last 18 months, where I've reflected on everything, where I'm like, I can't fucking believe we are still together, because it tore us apart as a couple and individually as people and as parents. And the shit that we went through, I wouldn't wish it on my worst enemy. It was horrific, and it still has like a lasting effect. But there were points working together was the best thing in the world. We literally thought we were invincible. We could do anything. We can try this. We can do that. Like, we kind of, I think we thrive off each other's energy quite well. But yeah, it's not for everyone. It's not for everyone, especially when it goes wrong.
Well, having had dinner at your house recently, I can. I love the energy of your house. I know it's always chaos in houses with all these kids. It's the same in mine, but like the energy. I really love your kitchen and sitting with you both. I feel that you're strong and that you've come through this, and congratulations on that, because I think in those darker moments it would be so easy to start turning on each other, and we probably all do at those points, but like to come through it and have learned from it. I suppose as we start to bring this conversation to a close, it would be good to ask you, would you do it again? If you did, well, what are the key learnings? If you had to summarize to other people that might be thinking of embarking on such a journey, or who might be in the midst of it right now, what would be the key takeaways you'd want to share with them? And yeah, how might you do it differently, if at all?
Would I do it again? Yeah. I don't know whether I'd do that again. I would never involve myself in production of food again. I would outsource it. I think we lost sight of the biggest message of the proof, which was a nut-free, safe bakery. I had parents coming in crying on me because their child could have a birthday cake. Their child that had a severe nut allergy, who had never been able to eat an ice cream from the ice cream van, was able to come and eat dessert safely. Wow. Like, that is a very powerful thing. And I'll never forget at the first festival we did, a parent came up to Chris and literally cried on Chris. And I think that was the moment he got it. He was like, because he's living with me and he's known that I can't eat nuts. And we actually now have, my eldest daughter has a peanut allergy. So I'm now experiencing it as someone with an allergy and with a child, and the fear of my child. Like, I worry about her every day. So I would like to do something within that world because it doesn't exist, and I really fucking should exist. But I wouldn't do it the way I did it before. But my biggest message is I 100% think if you have an idea to do it, start, try. Because in the 18 months, and I keep harking on about this 18 months since it closed. So I wanted to do a podcast when the business closed because I was so like fueled by needing to get this story out there. Had I done that, I think it would have been the most angry, fucking aggressive, negative, toxic conversation because I was all of those things at that point. Now, I've spent 18 months on reflecting. I can see everything I did wrong. I can see where we went wrong. I can look at myself and hold my head up high and know that I acted with nothing but integrity. I couldn't have put any more into that business than I did. I worked so fucking hard. I believed in it. It was incredible. It could have been something big, huge, whatever, but it wasn't. And I'm okay with that. You know, I tried, I was brave enough. I did things that honestly, I know that some people looked at and were like, I can't believe that how the hell did you make that happen? But we did, and we gave it a go. And I think that's the point. Don't be afraid to give it a go because it might fail and you might fall on your ass, but you can pick yourself up again.
Yeah.
And for me, leading up to the closure, I was like, it can't fail. It can't fail. I can't fail. Like, what the hell am I going to say to people? And then when it did close, I remember being so embarrassed to walk and do the school run and see people that knew me because I was like, I'm so full of shame that this didn't work out. But now I'm like, oh my God, like, thank God it failed because I'm not sure I would have been able to stop it had it gone any further. I think we'd have got ourselves into way more difficulties. I might not be married. I could have died. Like, that's the reality. At the end of the proof, I was so kind of mentally unwell that I honestly didn't even want to get up and go anymore. I had nothing in me. And now, and I can only imagine how much more my mental health would have gotten worse had it carried on. So no, I've realised there's no shame in it. I tried. Like, that needs to be applauded. I need to be proud of myself. And I would say to anyone else who's in that fucking hole, because it is a hole and it can get so horrible and so lonely, and financially, because money does matter, right? Like, you need money to live. Like, I can completely empathize with anyone who's facing that kind of level of financial ruin. It's horrific. But there is an end and there is light. And I definitely found that. I can go and watch my kids play football. I've got a job with people I love working with, and probably wouldn't have got that job had it not been for the proof. I'm really happy in my marriage. And, you know, apart from the guilt I have for the fact that the business went into liquidation, and obviously there were gaps in, you know, money, investors lost money, my family lost money, you know, that I hold quite, I don't think I'll ever be blasé about that. That's horrible. But I would just like anyone to know that if they're going through that or they've been through it, like, it will be all right. You will find some meaning at the end of it, and you'll kind of appreciate why you had to go through that to get here. And I kind of feel like this little space of We Go Again is that point. Like, maybe I couldn't change the world of nut-free baked goods, but I can maybe help someone who's really struggling with their business at the moment. And that kind of feels like the point.
Wow, what a journey from the shores of Torquay to like
been a ride.
Hackney and the proof. I think I really rate the hard work and I really respect
Thank
it.
you.
And I think your drive to now want to share the learnings is just so necessary. So, like, big up, Francesca Strange.
Thank you, David.
I'm really intrigued as to the conversations you're going to have from here on in.
Me too.
Because I think hearing these stories is just so incredibly powerful and necessary. And when we think about business, for me, it often doesn't really capture what the truth of what you've described today, which is a journey through life of finding value or driving to try and create what your younger self thought was value, and losing a lot of what you thought was true value only to find what, real value is.
Yeah.
And I think that, like, the journey through business is in many ways like the sort of self-actualization of us as humans, which isn't really the way it's pitched to us when we're coming up with ideas and need and like consumer sort of mindset. But I think that the world's evolving. I think our relationship with each other and communities and what we consume and why we bring things into the world, it's all sort of evolving. And with that, I think all these learnings, this opening up of this spectrum of what business actually is really, really necessary. And I think these conversations you're going to have will contribute to that.
I think so too. And I think my most important takeaway from the whole thing is that, like, as wild as it sounds, you can go again. You can try it again. You can go back you can go and get a job and work for someone else. Like, there are options, and failure is always kind of framed in such a negative way. And actually, it's not final. It's like that whole, when one door shuts, another one opens. It's kind of, that's it. Like, literally, that hasn't worked out. Okay, stop, reflect, like, have a timeout, whatever you need to do, and then start again. And I'm hoping to speak to lots of founders and people who run businesses who have had that experience, and now they're, thriving in whatever they're doing next. And I think that it's so important, because, like, the thought of being a failure is such a fucking horrible concept, but actually I'm really quite proud of it. And I know that some people might be like, oh yeah, whatever, that's such bullshit, but it's not. I feel way like a much better person now than the one I was a couple of years ago. Like, I'm more in control. I know my head. I know what I want. I know how to navigate relationships better. I'm honest. I'm more honest. Like, it's such a better place to be. And I kind of think it now makes me feel like I can try something new. I can start something new. I can try again. And that's my biggest message. I just want people to know that it's not the end. Like, honestly, I know it feels like it and it's horrific, but it won't be like that forever. I guess that's it.
Great. I think that's a good place to end it. It's been wonderful to sit with you for the last hour or so. You realise it's quite rare you sit down and have a really meaningful conversation with someone. Yeah. And that's why I think these are so important. There's a lot of messages that have come through for me personally, and I'm sure to anyone listening, from everything that you've said today. I suppose two very final micro questions would be, you alluded to the fact that you're not sure about what's next, but I'd love to hear if there is an inkling as to where the path might be going from now on for you. And also, because this has been a special conversation, I wondered if there's anybody that you want to dedicate the conversation to. So there's two questions for you.
Oh, that's really nice. Do I know where I'm going? So over the last year, primarily, I've had to kind of, find a job and find my feet a little bit. And I'm working with an amazing company with another amazing founder, Alice. And I really am, she kind of takes people along with her, and she's given me loads of opportunities to try different things. And it's really shown me what my options are. And I've done quite a lot of food and drink styling, which I think is where my kind of skills align quite nicely. And it's given me a bit of encouragement to follow that path potentially, and also start a small business again. But I'm not going to do that yet, because I think Chris would have an actual heart attack. And, talking about moving, we are actually going to be moving out of London soon, and we're going to be kind of starting again and starting afresh, because I do feel like we need that as a family. Because as much as I've been through it, they've they've all been to hell and back too. Not just Chris, Edie, Seb and Cece, but my mum and dad, my sisters and Chris's family. Like they've weathered the storm with us. And I guess in answer to would I dedicate this to anyone, I think it would be to all of them, particularly to Chris, Edie, Seb and Cece, because they've lived it. They've seen their mum go through it. And I think they would be the first people to say they are happier now and happier that their mum is back in their lives, and that's all that matters to them. Yeah.
Well, thank you, Fran, for that amazing conversation. I think it's full of insight, and it's been a joy to spend this time with you.
Thank you, David.